Okay. Now that we have a quorum, why don't we get started? I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Board of Directors of the California Housing Financing Agency. Why don't we start with a roll call?
Yes. Ms. Avila Farias. Ms. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Gunn for Secretary Ambassiani.
Here.
Mr. Gunning.
Here.
Mr. Hunter. Ms. Johnson Hall.
Here.
Mr. Jovan Agee for Treasurer Ma.
Here.
Zach Olmsted for Doug McCauley.
Here.
Secretary Podesta. Mr. Prince.
Here.
Mr. Russell. Ms. Sotelo.
Here.
Ms. Gordon. Ms. Bosler. Ms. Boatman Patterson.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
All right, well, thank you. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the minutes? I assume that to be yes. Are there any objections to the minutes being approved as distributed? Great, so be it. Let's move to item number 3. I do want to make a few remarks because, as I think a lot of you know, this is the last week of session. And I know between myself and Tia, we can't wait until it's over. Frances, are you out here? Yeah, I know you can't wait. I'm gonna start calling you James Brown. Hardest working man in the legislature. I do joke, but I am serious. I think kudos should go to Tia and Frances. I don't think all of you truly appreciate how much work they've been doing behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and then maintaining the real job over here as well. So I think as a board, we have to acknowledge the staff, not only for the budget, just the recognition of the agency by the administration for its effectiveness in the work going forward. And then all the stuff Tia doesn't even tell you or me about that she's involved in her dual role advising the governor on housing policy. We certainly can't wait till Friday, but I do want to acknowledge you, Tia.
Thank you.
And recognize your work, and Frances for keeping me informed, and the quiet man, the James Brown behind the scenes. So with that, I conclude my remarks and turn it over to you, Tia.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have to give kudos and shout outs to our sister agency, the Department of Housing and Community Development, and also the State Treasurer's Office, who has worked very collaboratively with all of us so that we can start implementing a lot of the package, whether it was the 17-18 package, the 18-19 package, and now the things that are in front of us now. So it truly has been kind of a lot going on.
On that note, Tia, can we just acknowledge Mr. Metcalf? I know you're going to
Yeah,
do that.
yes,
I
I
know you're going to do that, but I do want to give kudos, please, because we certainly appreciate all the work Ben has done this past 6 months and before. But
Absolutely, and as a result of that, Chairman Prince had called me. We promoted him. Board Member Prince had reached out and he said, "Are we doing something special for Ben?" And unfortunately, Ben wasn't able to be at this board meeting, and we have Zach Olmsted, who is here on his behalf, and you have a bio for Zach if you want to read a little bit about his very impressive background. But we did provide Ben with a resolution yesterday at the HCD Staff Appreciation Picnic. And so we did give him a resolution from all of you here at the board. You know, Mr. Metcalf worked very hard in leading HCD. He was probably the first confirmed director of HCD in probably a decade. And so under his leadership, they were able to do some incredible things. And it has really been a really good partnership between, I'd say, the 4 sister agencies. The 2 at the State Treasurer's Office consist of the Tax Credit Allocation Committee, CIDLAC, the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee, California Housing Finance Agency, and the Department of Housing and Community Development. So we do really see ourselves aligning and moving in the right direction. Ben did, so thank you.
here, Ben.
So Ben left a few words that I'm gonna just read. He said he had a chance to work closely with several members of the senior team here at Calhfa, particularly Don and Tim, and wanted to give them a shout out, and more recently with Kate and Francesque. And he is just in awe of your energy and creativity and your commitment to collaboration. and the other staff that College FA bring to the job every day to get things done. And so he wanted to thank us for that, and so we thank him in return. In addition to that, we have had some leadership changes here at College FA, and we'll be experiencing some leadership changes. Larry Flood, who was our Director of Finance, has moved over to the department, to State Treasurer's Office, and is serving as their Director of the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee. And so we're sad to see him go, but happy to see the leadership over at, and knowing that we'll continue to work closely with one another. Rose McCullough, who has been serving as our risk manager, her last day will be with us will be on September 20th, and she has done just an absolute incredible helpful work as that risk manager, and getting some of those reportings that you all had asked for done, and getting the asset management in shape, and really moving the agency in the right direction. So during these transitions, Tim Sue is going to be serving as our, once again, unicorn, and heading up finance, as well as continuing to serve as the Director of Home Ownership. Lori Hamahashi, who is our comptroller, who works behind the scenes and you don't rarely get to see her, who is just incredible, will be helping Tim as he heads up both of those. So she'll be lending her support and her wonderful accounting skills to that. On a positive note, we have 2 new hirees that will be coming, and we will have a fully staffed leadership staff in multifamily, which I am very excited about, and I know Kate is very excited about too. But we will have a credit officer coming on board. Her name is Sheena Coe, and she starts on September 18th. And we will have a deputy director of multifamily, Andre Massey, and she will be starting on October 14th. And yes, Tina, aren't you just excited about that? It is actually very, very exciting. We also have some retirees that I want to give a shout out to. Cheryl McDonald, our longtime chief in the Culver City office, retired on August 31st, and so we did have a wonderful celebration for her. Jim Poley will be retiring on September 1st, which I guess these are my old notes, I'm sorry. And Lori Andrade, a longtime loan officer in single family, will be separating on September 12th with a retirement date of September 15th. Let's see, I think that deals with all the staffing changes. For our fiscal year 18-19 business plan and operating budget, which is included in your report, we did assist over 15,000 Californians, helping them to purchase a home, creating or preserving affordable units for those most in need. We exceeded our production and volume goals by 210%. So our revenues goals by 170%, and our operating expenses came in under our approved budget by 22%. So kudos to this College FA staff, because it is just an absolute banner, stellar year that we have broken historical records in the history of the organization. So I just have to give a shout out to the incredible work of Don Kavir and our staff that have keep us on the right track and keep our operations going. I want to give a shout out to the Department of General Services and the Department of Housing and Community Development, who worked double time to create a state-owned surplus property map. That heat map is up. You will recall that the governor did put out an executive order dealing with state excess properties, so that those properties would be surveyed and then filtered for developable sites. They have exceeded all of the deadlines that were in that executive order, and it is anticipated that RFP for developers for those sites that have been identified will be going out at the end of this month. I celebrate and congratulate the Treasurer's Office between their new leadership. They have hired a new director of the Tax Credit Allocation Committee, and she is fantastic. Judith Blackwell, who has started. Judith Blackwell, who has started over there, Larry over there. So their team is coming together quite nicely, and they're working on their emergency regs.
It's her 1-month anniversary today.
Is it her 1-month anniversary? Yay, Judith.
I met with her this morning. She's wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Just a brief recap on AB 101, which was the trailer bill dealing with the housing and the appropriations and some of the housing policy to create partnerships with local government to provide short-term stimulus to jumpstart production, Quick deployment of those funds in first year, that's one of the things that we're gonna be working closely with TCAC, because as you know, there was 500 million in state tax credits, 200 which is up to 200, which would be paired with California's, at CalHFA's mixed income program, and so we're gonna be working very closely with them to deploy those funds in the first year very quickly. And then in year 2 and beyond, additional, policy changes that need to happen to make that program more efficient, that they will continue to have those conversations. The state treasurer, I believe, is creating a working group to help make some recommendations on what revisions may need to be made for year 2 and implementation at our mutual goals of preservation and creation of affordable housing. And so yesterday, after quite some time negotiating and them taking to their housing committee, they did approve an MOU in which outlines the parameters of a transparent way of how CalHFA can help prop them up and create some local capacities so that we can create and preserve more affordable housing. That should be going to their city council in the next couple of weeks, so we're very excited about that. On the federal level, one of the things we really want to make sure that we're watching is the federal housing finance reform. The president, along with the treasurer, did put out, and the Federal Housing Finance Agency put out a draft plan of federal housing finance reform, in which how do we deal with the government-sponsored entities, primarily Freddie, Fannie, and FHA, in dealing with lending and lending opportunities, affordable housing goals. You know that those GSEs have been in conservatorship for a decade now, and so to get those government-sponsored entities out of that conservatorship, this can have significant impacts on lending and mortgage lending in the nation, and so we want to make sure that at a federal level, that's something we continue to watch very closely. Upcoming events, I know this is a long report, huh?
No, keep it going.
Upcoming events on September 17th, we will be having our leadership's team staff appreciation picnic at the Crocker Park, which is right down the street. October 9th and 10th, the National Housing Conference Advisory Council is in Washington, D.C., and I have been asked to sit on the National Housing Conference Advisory Council, and so their inaugural meeting will be October 10th, and so I will be traveling to D.C. to sit on that National Housing Advisory Council. October 19th and 20th is the NCSHA's annual conference in Boston, Massachusetts, and that's October 19th to 22nd. October 25th is the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing's annual conference, and that will be in Los Angeles and LA Live. So if any of our Los Angeles or Southern California board members would like to attend that, or any other board members, please let us know so that we can arrange for that to happen via our guidelines. On November 6th through 8th, the California CCRH, which is California Coalition of Rural Housing, their Rural Housing Conference will be taking place in Asilomar. November 6th and 7th is Cal Alpha, which is the California Association of Local Housing Finance Agencies, will be having their conference here in Sacramento. As you know, fall is the housing conference season, so we will all likely be running. So, and making sure that we all have representation at all of these conferences. Board members, do not be surprised if we call on you because staff is stretched so very, very thin. Next week, I will be traveling to the San Joaquin Valley Housing Summit in Visalia and speaking at that housing conference. And on September 28th, I'll be speaking in Chico at their housing summit. Kate Ferguson, our multifamily director, will be participating in a mixed income panel with the California Housing Partnership at the Northern California Nonprofits Annual Conference on September 20th. And you will also be speaking in San Diego at the San Diego Federation's annual conference on October 9th and 10th. So like I said, the fall is very much a housing conference season. I just saw our Department of Finance representative come in, and so I want to welcome Gail Miller. Gail Miller is with the Department of Finance, and you can see her bio has been distributed to all of you as well. And so I am very excited about Gail coming on board because Gail and I are longtime colleagues from our legislative staffing days. So welcome, Gail.
20 years ago.
You don't have to say that out loud. It just, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, we were children prodigies. And Melinda, is this your first board meeting? I have to give a shout out to Melinda Grant, who is the Undersecretary for Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and welcome to your first CalHFA board meeting. So we have a full agenda ahead of us, so I think, and good to see you, Tina, and Teresa. So we'll go ahead and turn that back over so we can get started.
Let's get started. I think we have a robust agenda today, a lot of projects to look at. You all have the placards in front of you because we are streaming live. Allow me to at least recognize you and call you out before you talk, and so the folks at home can pay attention and listen to us. So with that, Don, are you up first, item number 4?
Yes, I am. Okay, good morning, Chair Gunning and members of the board. I'm Don Kavir, the agency's Chief Deputy Director. And the item before you this morning is CalHFA's fiscal year 1920 allocation plan for the deployment of state funds to be administered by CalHFA under the provisions of Assembly Bill 101. I'm going to note up front that we're not seeking the board's approval for any changes to our current mixed income program. We're simply presenting our allocation plan for the new resources that have been provided to CalHFA. However, as a part of our presentation, we will be updating you on our recent efforts to solicit feedback from our affordable housing industry partners on our mixed income program and what people are, and we're going to give you some intel on what people are saying is sort of needed in the marketplace at this time. Once we've worked through all those comments, any material changes that we are recommending for the program, we would bring to the board in a subsequent meeting. So with that, I'm going to give a brief overview of the plan for fiscal year 1920 and then turn it over to my colleagues, Kate Ferguson, our Director of Multifamily Programs, and Tim Sue, our Director of Homeownership, to give you a little more color and detail on the proposed strategy. So as you are undoubtedly aware, Assembly Bill 101 provided a significant investment of state resources for the deployment or the development of affordable housing, and more specifically earmarked funds for CalHFA to jumpstart production of new housing units with a mix of incomes from 30 to 120% of area median income. Under the provisions of the bill, CalHFA was allotted $500 million in general fund to be received over a 4-year period as follows. For fiscal year 1920, we'll receive $200 million of the $500 million. In 2021, $95 million, $120 million in 21-22, and the remaining $85 million in 22-23. The bill then goes on to expand the state tax credit program by increasing the program from $70 million to $500 million annually, and by increasing the applicable percentage on eligible basis from 13 to 30% for high-cost areas, qualified census tracts, and difficult-to-develop areas. The bill allows for up to $200 million per year, for $500 million per year subsequently, but it requires that it be appropriated through the state's budget process. And we are then eligible for up to $200 million of that $500 million. And so we're obviously hopeful that that will be an annual appropriation that will keep coming our way. In order to utilize these new resources quickly, efficiently, and fulfill the legislative intent of AB 101, we have outlined a strategy for the deployment of the initial first-year funding of $200 million. The building block of our strategy is to request a private activity bond allocation from the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee. Based upon our analysis, we believe CalHFA will need approximately $1 billion in bond allocation to meet the demands of our programs for the fiscal year, and we are further requesting that in partnership with the Treasurer's Office, CDLAC allow CalHFA to administer this allocation directly. This will improve the speed of our execution for our program, which we intend to move to an over-the-counter program to expedite production and to move shovel-ready projects forward. Further, we hope that this collaboration will be of assistance to CIDLAC in the sense that CalHFA would assume the administrative burden for any projects that receive an allocation from us, and that we would obviously continue to work very closely with CIDLAC to ensure program compliance and to provide CIDLAC with any information that they need in order to allow for this allocation. Staff have been discussing this proposal with the treasurer's staff, and I think we have a meeting being scheduled to walk through our formal written proposal here in the next week or two. So we're hopeful that we can come to an arrangement around this. So with that as a foundational element of our strategy, we propose using $140 million of AB 101 resources to augment our mixed income program. Likewise, the $200 million in state tax credits would be directly linked to this program, which is consistent with the legislative intent surrounding the state's expansion of state tax credits. Additionally, all of these resources will serve to supplement our existing SB 2 funding, which was received under the 2017, I believe it's the Building Homes and Jobs Act of 2017. And then lastly, we propose that the remaining $60 million of AB 101 be used for innovative financing solutions, which we'll talk in more detail about a little later in the presentation. So by way of background, the CalHFA's current mixed income program was born out of the Building Homes and Jobs Act of 2017, commonly referred to as SB 2. We launched our application process in February of 2019. And it was fully subscribed, in which we deployed did preliminary allocations of $40 million for 8 projects that represent about 1,300 units of new construction. While the primary enhancement of CalHFA's mixed income program is the addition of new financial resources, we are evaluating the lessons learned in our first round of SB 2 funding. We're assessing the feedback from our stakeholder outreach efforts, and we're considering what programmatic changes may be required to the current program. And to this end, we want to expedite, as I've said before, deployment of the funds in an efficient and scalable way that jumpstarts new unit production for projects ready to go and recycles funds over a shorter duration to assist more projects and in essence create more momentum around getting projects going and things moving forward. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kate Ferguson and Tim Sue to add some additional color to our plan and to hopefully answer all your questions.
Good morning, Chair Gunning and members of the board. I'm Kate Ferguson. I'm the Director of Multifamily Programs here at CalHFA. And as Don indicated, part of our process in developing our recommendation for the deployment of AB 101 resources was first to look at the CalHFA Mixed Income Program, which we refer to as MIP. Given that we are recommending $140 million of the AB 101 general funds be deployed via the MIP program, and given that the $200 million in new low-income housing state tax credits are specifically legislated to be distributed in concert with MIP, a full reevaluation of the terms and conditions of the program is underway. We have begun this reevaluation by soliciting feedback. We have begun this reevaluation. Can you all hear me?
No,
Yeah.
it was the screen came off. That's
Oh.
what.
Okay.
We hear you fine, Kate.
Okay, thank you. We have begun this reevaluation by soliciting feedback from the affordable housing community via a survey that went out last month to 250 developers and housing authorities throughout the state. The primary goal of the survey was to elicit direct feedback about what is working and what is not working in our efforts to spur development via this program. While our full evaluation of the feedback is underway, one need is very clear, and that is the need to simplify and streamline the process for accessing state resources. To that end, the overall strategy presented here for the deployment of the related AB 101 resources contemplates a one-stop shop approach, which we perfectly have the slide exhibited now. The goal of CalHFA is to partner with TCAC and CIDLAC to deploy the resources provided by AB 101 as efficiently and effectively as possible. Our plan is to do this by leveraging the existing CIDLAC, TCAC, CalHFA joint processes and underwriting criteria to develop a one-stop shop for the development community. Our expectation is that this approach will reduce production time delays and expense related to accessing bond cap, state low-income housing tax credits, and MIP loan funds from 3 different agencies. Toward this end, you will see that our first priority will be for CalHFA to adopt using the TCAC-CIDLAC application. Utilizing stakeholder feedback, our goal is to address issues and processes which unintentionally cause barriers to reducing development timelines and cost. Additionally, we have requested TCAC reserve $200 million of 2020 state tax credits for CalHFA. Our hope is that TCAC will allow us to award these credits as a part of the underwriting and approval process for the mixed income program. Finally, we will request a $1 billion allocation of 2020 bond cap from CIDLAC with the request that CalHFA be allowed to allocate bond cap to the individual projects in conjunction with the state tax credits and the MIP funds. This is a new and innovative process proposal which will require significant collaboration and partnership by CalHFA, CIDLAC, and TCAC. If we are successful in doing this, we anticipate that on a project-by-project basis, we will shorten the application time period by a minimum of 60 days. Our proposal to CIDLAC is the key component of the one-stop shop. Pursuant to California Government Code 8869.85, each state agency must apply to CIDLAC for allocation of a portion of the state's ceiling. The code states that the allocation may be for a specific project, or it may be for a designated dollar amount to be utilized for projects or programs at the discretion of the state agency. Based on this, we will request the $1 billion allocation of 2020 volume cap. Our proposal contemplates that CalHFA will allocate the bond cap directly to individual projects versus having to reapply to CIDLAC for delegation of the bond cap from existing bond cap we've already received. CalHFA will ensure that the policies, procedures, and quality control checks utilized will meet all CIDLAC standards. The next slide shows the detailed process that we have reviewed in assessing our proposed process. I know the slide is a bit busy. I promise I won't go into the weeds with it, but the point is to exhibit that the fact that much of the process needed for combining our underwriting and review of MIP CIDLAC funds already exists. Only 2 process changes related to CalHFA communication to CIDLAC are necessary, and I can say with confidence that the 2 process changes which would be made to the existing method for allocating bond cap to individual projects will create nominal additional work for CalHFA, and they will eliminate much of the duplication of work done by CalHFA, CIDLAC, and TCAC in underwriting individual projects. Changing this process only for the deployment of the AB 101 related deals will reduce the workload for CIDLAC significantly and will provide the necessary streamlining that we are hearing is so important to our stakeholders. Currently, the developers who access MIP financing through CalHFA apply to CalHFA first. CalHFA then underwrites the projects based on our underwriting criteria in addition to the criteria required by CIDLAC and TCAC. And finally, CalHFA applies again to CIDLAC for a portion of the bond cap already received by CalHFA to be allocated to the individual project. Concurrently, an application is made to TCAC for credits. Delegation of the authority to do these last 2 steps from CIDLAC and TCAC to CalHFA only for the AB 101 related resources would help move the resources in a quicker and more efficient fashion. We've reviewed the regulatory and legal issues related to this, and we've worked with legal and bond counsel to identify any federal or state legal issues related. We have determined CIDLAC has the existing authority to make the $1 billion allocation and to redefine the process for project level allocation. The allocation would not require any regulatory changes. Additionally, bond counsel has confirmed that they have no concerns related to issuing their opinions on the individual bond transactions if CalHFA as issuer does the allocation at the project level. CalHFA will continue to impose CIDLEC requirements on each of the projects financed with private activity bonds, and we will continue to comply with all the requirements of the bonds as we do now. The benefits of this proposed process change are multiple. The purpose for recommending this strategy is, of course, to be true to the intention of AB 101. The legislation makes an express distinction between the deployment strategy for these resources in year 1 versus year 2 and beyond. Year 1 is to be a stimulus year, focused on jump-starting production by providing more capital to shovel-ready construction projects to make them feasible. The legislation calls for quick delivery of the resources by using existing bond and 4% low-income housing tax credit regulations. My expectation is that in years 2 and beyond, we'll see broad reforms related to a variety of policy questions about regional shares and how many resources a specific developer can have. We will consider these same issues when looking at revisions for our mixed income program that we're doing right now. For year 1, though, the impetus is to use the resources to get construction going. And with that, I will turn over the mic to Tim Sue to provide some additional detail about the remainder of our allocation plan.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Timothy Sue. I'm the Director of Homeownership at CalHFA. And as Tia mentioned earlier, I'm going to be heading back to finance. This is something that I've done before. So you'll hear from me again later in this board meeting about a finance agenda. I'm humbled that Tia and Don has the confidence I can do this again. I guess I didn't do poorly last time, so I can get to do this again. But it's fine. I think that there's actually a lot of things going on in the agency that are really, really exciting. And finance is a key part of that. So as we thought about innovative financing tools here at the agency, what are some of the things that we were thinking about? We were thinking about things that the marketplace has distribution network for, meaning that we didn't necessarily want to do things in which we felt like that we had to build up from ground zero. And also we wanted things that were scalable and things that we can potentially recycle over time. This is sort of one thing that I advocate for all the time is that we don't want to just have a pilot program. We want to have things that are sustainable and that we can potentially run for as long as we can, because sometimes we don't want to gain momentum and all of a sudden the money runs out and then we don't have a program anymore. So those are the kind of things that we were kind of focused on. So we're going to talk about some of the ideas that we have for the $60 million. Some of it is for single family, some of it is for multifamily. So first is the expansion of non-traditional homeownership opportunities. If you look at our single family menu today, and it is really expanding in a big way. One of the things that we talk about too a lot is CalHFA being a governmental entity, we are trying to be more things to more people over time. And just last week, we added USDA to our product offerings, and we also added the HUD Section 184 program. This is something I brought to the board. I think I want to say it was about 2 or 3 board meetings ago. So those 2 programs were launched last week. If you look at our menu offerings, what you'll see is that there are 2 branches there, if you will. There is the non-traditional housing types. Here I'm talking about the manufactured housing, the land trusts, the leaseholds, the ADUs. And there's another branch where we're talking about specialty loan products. So here we're talking about the HUD Section 184, which I just mentioned, the USDA, the VA, and our program for the disaster area. So in general, what we're talking about here is incentivizing these programs by giving them more assistance. And some of it is warranted because if you look at, let's say, for example, the Section 184, which just launched last week, so we'll see how that goes. But for example, the land trust, though we launched that early part of last year, we actually haven't actually done any loans there. Leaseholds, we have about 14 of those, and we've done about $4 million of that. So there are sort of areas in which we want to improve in these sort of non-traditional housing types and specialty loan products. And the next thing that we're thinking about is this is also something I talked about with the board, and this is actually part of our business plan. Last calendar year, in the year 2018, when we look at our production in single family, about 5% of our production went to new construction. And that's actually, it came to me as a surprise that we even got 5% because our loan product is a 45 to 60 day lock. And so it's more relevant and more pertinent, if you will, for resales. So what we're thinking about here is allowing the lender and the borrower to extend their rate lock all the way out to 180 days. And we're providing assistance to offset the cost of the extending the rate lock up to 180 days. And we want to incentivize new construction in single family as well as multifamily. And we're hoping that we can ramp up our percentage in new construction from 5% on. And accessory dwelling units. As the board knows, we now have a pilot program that we launched with Self-Help and the City of Clovis. We launched this in Q1, I think, in February, I believe. For better or worse, we actually haven't done a loan here. We haven't funded a loan. There are a couple of loans in the pipeline, but we haven't funded one. And Self-Help is requesting to expand the program outside of the old town of Clovis. The board might remember that the City of Clovis provided 3 architectural designs for the old town. And they basically said that if you use these architectural designs, you have expedited review, expedited permitting review process. And what they're trying to do, the City of Clovis, is trying to expand outside of Old Town. I'm looking at Mr. Prince because I remember when I came to the board last time, I just had a flash in my memory that he got very excited about the City of Clovis. Anyway, so we're in the middle of working with Self-Help to extend that program. What I've requested out of Self-Help is that if they could provide us a one-page lessons learned to date so that we can figure out if it's just about expanding it to, let's say, more households eligibility, or do we need to change some of our program designs? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I do want to mention, so in addition to the Clovis idea that it's pilot right now, it's possible that we can replicate what we did with Self-Help in the City of Clovis. The other day, we were also brainstorming about the possibility of figuring out a way to leverage these dollars so that we can bring other lenders into the mix. And the last but not least is that there's also an idea right now of possibly using some of these dollars for ADUs to match some of the dollars that's coming out of Cal Home. And disaster relief, this is something that we talk about a lot, and this is something I think that, as I mentioned, we do have a disaster relief program for single family. And this is also something that we're thinking about a lot in different applications. So for single family, I'll speak to single family. I'll turn the mic over to Kate to talk about multifamily. For single family, what we're talking about here is the state providing matching dollars to bridge any gaps for the construction of new units. So the one example we're looking at right now, it has all the sort of the policy goodies that people would possibly want. We're looking at a land trust that's new construction, that's also manufactured housing, and possibly getting involved in the transaction from a state matching point of view to bridge the gap. It sounds great, and it is great, but it is just 5 units for now. But it could be a beginning of something that we think about in this space, that us coming in to provide state matching when the locals are also putting in dollars, when we have this kind of alignment of policy objectives of disaster areas. Land trust is a model that provides long-term affordable housing supply. As Tia likes to say, I'm going to steal a line from Tia, Instead of just making housing affordable, we're actually building, affordable housing. So that is a model that we're looking at right now, and that could be something that we pursue in this area. I'm going to turn over to Kate.
I think for the multifamily side, the disaster relief is something that I feel fairly strongly about. What we are hopeful is that we can use those funds in very creative ways and very flexible ways to partner with other public sector cities and counties that are to leverage off of funds and activities that they are making available, whether it's a waiver of fees, special zoning requirements, allowance of waiving of permit fees, things of that nature. So we're trying to remain fairly flexible. We don't have a defined process in place for that. It's something that as we are out talking to the counties, especially the counties that are disaster counties at this point, there is a huge amount of need. And so I think we will come in, as Tim said, as gap fillers. We're looking for deals that are ready to go, much like our MIP program. It's the same thing, where we can incent construction in an area that needs new affordable housing, but also has lost a large portion of their inventory to disaster. That is really where we'll be looking to fill the gaps with these funds. Turn it back to Tim.
Oh, I think that concludes our presentation, so we're available for questions.
Excellent, thank you. Questions? Go ahead.
Delilah Sotelo, just to write for the, okay. Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited about really the growing of this program. For me, it's such a testament to the collaboration with the departments and having the Treasurer's Office and Calhfa work with CIDLAC, and now that Larry's over there, is really going to be, truly monumental in terms of moving things forward. Two areas I have that, I just wanted to hear a little bit more about. This is really about the missing middle and focusing our energies and attention and flexibility on stabilizing, those households between 80% AMI and 120% AMI, right? Because our regular programs just don't hit that band. So when you're thinking about improvements to the program or modifications to the program, will there be a special focus or attention in providing the subsidy more heavily towards that band? Or are you still looking to spread it, at the 30%, 50%, 60% levels?
Kate Ferguson again, just for the record. I think that we're still assessing that. I think what we're hearing from a lot of the feedback we've gotten from stakeholders is that missing middles at different AMIs, depending on the county and the city. So at 60% in a rural county, you may be at 120% of market. Or in San Francisco, if you're at 120%, you may be still well below market in terms of rental rates. So we're trying to weigh that, and I think what we'll see is still a broad spectrum of affordability from 30 to 120. I think the more we talk to the counties and the cities and the developers, what we want to make sure is that the deals not only hit the actual missing middle in an effective way, and that we're not over controlling, that they have to be 80 to 120. For some, it may be 70 to 90. For others, it may be 60 to 80. It may be, so we're really trying to balance that. But yes, the missing middle is the impetus for the mixed income program, and it's definitely where our focus stays in terms of being able to increase the bandwidth that's going to that portion of the market.
So I think that speaks specifically and very accurately to the flexibility that we at Calhfa can have, because programmatically, through regulations, CIDLAC and TCAC haven't been able to kind of create that different product type. So I think that if Calhfa does administer the program, that flexibility can apply to rural versus urban versus, some of the higher income markets. So I think that's a really good plan. The other thing I like about this program is the not only the streamlining, but the predictability that it gives developers. And I think that the one-stop shopping is a huge advantage in the development community, because you really do get the predictability, and you're able to really save on, cost and time and energy. What I'm wondering, and I see the collaboration among the public partners, but have we reached out to kind of the equity community, the investor community? State credits aren't necessarily as attractive as federal credits, so part of making this program work and having the flexibility and having the predictability is that you're able to really actually sell the credits,
Right.
and put them in place quickly.
Yeah.
So have we reached out to investment partners out in the marketplace for their feedback?
Take this. Okay. I would say yes, on an informal basis.
Okay.
I've reached out both through the development community and directly to investors.
Okay.
And the development community, I would say, has been seeing state credits at about 84 to 85 cents, maybe 90, depending on where they are. With the fact that we're pumping so many state credits into the market at the same time, what I am hearing both from the development community, and we'll see where the investors shake out, but is that underwriting's coming in at about 75 cents to 80 cents on the dollar. And I do think that there are huge, when we first started, sort of anecdotally, I'll say, because I don't have this, we didn't do a survey yet, that's sort of phase 2 of assessing the program. But as we started this, reaching out to just some of my personal contacts in the investment world, there are investors in the state of California that reside in the state of California that could take a huge portion of the new state tax credits very happily. That was the information that I got, but we don't have empirical data that proves that out. I can just tell you what I'm hearing from the markets. Did you want to address
So
that?
my recommendation with that regard is that there are large employers in many areas of the state that this would be attractive to, whether that's, in the San Jose markets or some in the Los Angeles markets. And the influence of the treasurer and certainly the governor in terms of attracting that kind of single entity corporate, investor who can use the state credits as a write-off to whatever earnings they have, would really be a nice private-public partnership, kind of this P3 concept. So that might be a nice thing.
We're very interested in doing that, and I think we've been having some conversations with some of those companies. And I think the challenge is finding a company that doesn't shelter their state income tax to the point that they have no tax liability, so they have no interest. If I could just jump back really quick to I think your first question, I just wanted to point out, for the purposes of our sort of initial rollout of the MIP program, we've been very focused on getting the 80 to 120 tranche, and I think I don't know that it was 100% of all, or it wasn't all 8 deals. I thought there was one that didn't have the 80 to 120, or maybe had a 90.
And that was more, again, that was more market driven.
But all of the rest did have a 10% of the deal is 80 to 120. So yeah.
And that one deal that didn't have it, we did have staff go back and ask them if we can structure with that, but to Kate's point, just it's the market driven.
Right, I just think that the governor's office and the governor in terms of introducing that was really one of the main intents to create that.
And I also think that I just wanted to mention that we are obviously also interested in requiring income averaging on the projects too, to ensure that we get, a wider band within the normal spectrum of the tax credits, so.
Congratulations, good thinking.
Hey, Don, I had one question on the funding. So SB2 was 200 million a year, and then the budget this year was the 500 million, but ongoing, that 500 has to be reappropriated each year?
No,
Just
no. So if I could back up to the slide, but really what it is there's 500 million that's allocated to us it's allocated to us over a 4-year period. And so the first year of funding is 200
For 4
million
years,
of that, and then it's kind of confusing because then there's also this 200 million of tax credits. So that's the difference. And then the out years, those allocations don't need to be reappropriated, but the tax credits do.
Do have,
Yeah.
right, thank you.
So let me just clarify, the 500 million in general fund for low and moderate was one-time funding.
This year.
Yes, of which it's over 4 years. there is also 500 million in tax credits that would have, that it is, and, the belief is that it will be ongoing, but we want to make sure that we're going through the budget process to ensure that we can afford to give that 500 million. So the idea is that the 500 million would be on, in tax credits, would be ongoing, but it is to go through the budget process to ensure that we have, we wanted to be able to turn it off if the economy isn't where it needs to be. And so that's the purpose of it going through the budget process.
But of that, 200 million is what we're,
The up to
As-
200 million in state
in
tax
state credits
credits
is what the
is to marry with
Calhfa
Calhfa's mixed
program.
income program.
Yes, the
I
other
pr-
300 million
yeah.
is what TCAC is gonna use.
Yes.
in
I
its
probably
program.
went through it too quickly, but that chart right there should kind of
Yeah, that
paint exactly how it's working. So that first 200 million in tax credits is what we're talking about today, as well as the 200 million in the AB 101. The yellow tax credit allocations are the ones that have to be reappropriated through the budget process, and then the others are just the incremental allocation of the rest of the 500 million from the general fund up there.
Great,
And
thank
I
you.
apologize, Kate, I shot her in the face with the laser. So.
It's my initiation.
That's all right. Yes. Mr. Prince, sir.
Yes, am I right in my recollection that the loan limit on this program is $5 million?
Currently under review, yeah.
That,
5 million.
so that's what I was just, I know that you're looking at the guidelines. I just want to point out that in the valley, our construction costs are like 90% of the construction costs of the Bay Area, but our rents are 1/3 the level, so it's kind of hard to maintain that same loan level. So I just want to bring that up, that for the valley, that $5 million limit is,
Right. We're definitely looking at that, yes.
thank you.
Eileen, go ahead.
I just had a question. I'm curious, so that, it looks like this program's offering 4% federal credits plus a state credit, and I'm just curious, how does that compare, like, that stack to the 9%, and how compelling is it relative, on a relative basis?
Do you wanna-
Yeah, you take it.
Well, our
Right.
MIP program can't be paired with the 9%, and
Right, I'm saying, if you have 4% plus the state comparing to
value.
a project that's a 9%
I
credit.
think we're still running some models on it, but we
Right.
think it's going to be very beneficial, because of, I think when I mentioned at the earliest part of the presentation, the real kicker is the kind of the supercharging of the eligible basis on the tax credit. So we're still trying to run to see, you know, in terms of even sizing our MIP, how much, you know, when you run a model at 70 to 85 cents on the state tax credit, the supercharge, what is the delta difference that we really need to try to solve for in order to deliver? So I can't give you a dollar answer yet, but I think we're trying to solve against the average cost of building an affordable housing unit, what that gap looks like, and how much that state tax credit's gonna plug that gap.
but I mean, historically in the market, I would say that the federal credits to state credits is about 3-to-1. If you have 15 million of federal, you would expect like about 5 million of state at the most. So that would be sort of where my expectation would be.
Thank you.
My experience in Fresno is that it is appearing to be very competitive, and so it's a great tool that's being rolled out to provide more tools for a community to build housing, so.
Any other questions from board members? I just want to echo Ms. Sotelo's comments about all the agencies working together, because that's really a significant achievement from where it was in the past. So I do want to acknowledge, right, the board for that, and this program's just exciting to see this type of financing mechanism out there. So kudos to the staff. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 19-14?
And move to approve?
Okay, moved by
Sure.
Ms. Gallagher, second by Ms. Sotelo. You get that? A roll call.
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Gunn? Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson Hall?
Yes.
Mr. A.G.?
Aye.
Mr. Olmsted?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Ms. Sotelo?
Yes.
Resolution 19-14 is approved.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to item number 5. Kate, you're still up there, right?
I'm still here.
Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you.
Normandy Loft Apartments.
Okay. Is this me? I need my glasses for this one. There we go. Okay. Good morning. I'm Ruth Vakili, Loan Officer, Cal HFA. I'm going to try something that I haven't done before, which is man the slides as I speak. So, please be patient with me. And we'll see how it goes. If it doesn't go that well, we'll do something different next time. So, today I'm presenting Normandy Lofts Apartments. It's a 50-unit project in Los Angeles in an area known as Koreatown. It's centrally located near downtown Los Angeles, the Hollywood and Beverly Hills neighborhoods. The area is a mix of retail, commercial, and multifamily projects. It was built in 1928 and is a 5-story building. There we go. I'm gonna have to go next. There we go. I can do this. There, thank you. Well, encouragement helps. Project was built in 1928. It's 5 stories. It has 41 studios and 9 one-bedroom units. The project has been seismically upgraded in 2013. And over the past few years, about half of the units have been upgraded. The units have full kitchens and baths and through-wall heating and air conditioning. Now let's see if we can do this again. There we go. This is a picture of the interior and the entry area. It has an elevator that is going to be upgraded, and this is a photo of a 1-bedroom unit living room and a typical kitchen. You can see that this unit has been upgraded with new cabinets and flooring. That one. Got it. We're getting there. Even so, the project has been very well maintained, but the plan is, upon closing the permanent loan, to upgrade the project at a cost of about $19,000 a unit. Repairs such as repairing the elevator, replacing windows, repairing the roof and stairways, upgrading lighting and fire alarm systems, and upgrades on 25 of the unit's interiors. There won't be any relocation required, and we are requiring that the work be completed within 18 months of construction. This is a project that is a somewhat newer program financing, which is the Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing program. Short is NOAA. And the NOAA project that we're financing is in partnership with the Housing and Community Investment Department of the City of LA. The City of LA has already participated in the project through the providing a new generation fund in August 2018 to close the acquisition loan. When we close a permanent loan, we'll be paying that loan off, and our first mortgage is $6,850,000. We're also providing a subsidy loan of $1.5 million. HCID LA will also be funding $1.5 million, and an existing acquisition loan through KB Visions will be paid down and extended for 40 years. The project, which is currently a market rate project, will then be restricted to 100% of the units at 50, 80, and 100% AMI. So this is considered not only a NOAA project, but a mixed income project as well. The loan, once we close the permanent financing, the developer will pursue a property tax exemption. They have, we're expecting that to be completed within about 12 months of closing. And during that time, we do have a reserve to pay for the full property taxes until the exemption is received. We're, right now, our loan of $6,850,000 would be underwritten at a 1.07 debt coverage ratio until the property tax exemption is received. We have capitalized 2 years of taxes, which we feel fairly confident that will not be needed, but just in case, the funds are there. And once the property tax exemption is received on all of those units that are 80% and below, then the debt coverage ratio will be a 1.15. The property tax exemption reserve is in addition to a 6-month operating reserve and a replacement reserve capitalized at $50,000. So overall, we've capitalized the project very well, and we're anticipating that the debt coverage ratio will actually be a 1.20. So I stand corrected on that. The loan to value is 73%. Overall, the project has been conservatively underwritten. The borrowing entity is K-Town, sorry for the background noise, Normandy Lofts K-Town LLC, and the developer is Strategic Realty Holdings. They've had considerable experience in market rate housing and managing, acquiring, upgrading over 70 market rate multifamily projects over the years. They've also been more recently participating in affordable housing projects and have acquired 5 tax credit properties. The property manager is Cannon Management. They have over 36 years of experience, and they manage over 100 market rate and affordable properties in Southern California. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Can I provide a little color?
Please.
This is not a typical project or program that we would have done. And I have to give kudos to staff for working very closely and collaboratively and working with the City of Los Angeles and working with the developer to bring this to fruition. In the City of Los Angeles, we have a neighborhood which is quickly gentrifying. And we have that in a lot of our urban cores, in which how do you could create something that provides for anti-displacement and deal with gentrification. And so we have these policy ideas or these concepts that we're trying to put into practice, but this is not a tax credit deal. This is not a bond deal. And so this is new for staff and new for the state of California to come together with the local government to try to create a policy and implement it into practice. And I have to tell you, it was extremely difficult. And so by all the parties coming together and Ruth putting on a hat and working very closely with that team, I think that's why this was able to come to fruition, because it required everybody coming to the table with a piece. But Ruth is being very modest as she sits there giving the presentation to you, because I think everyone got a call about this project, including the treasurer's office, multiple calls. So I don't know if the developer is out there in the
Yes.
audience, but if the developer would like to come and take a seat and introduce themselves, I think that would be beneficial. And to recognize the work of staff on this, because we were hoping that it could be replicable, but I have to tell you, it was very, very difficult. And so the underwriting that goes into these kind of deals and the front end work, I think there were a lot of lessons to be learned in this particular deal that we will hopefully be able to go forward with, but it was not easy. So, care to introduce yourself?
Good morning, board members. My name is Myron Chang, asset manager with Strategic Realty Holdings. Just want to thank everybody for being so involved in this, especially to Ruth for getting us to this point, and just here to help to get this moved along.
Thank you.
I would like to add too, the developer has been very patient with us. It has been a process. They acquired the building a year ago, and we've been working through the different aspects of this financing, the rehab, managing the tenants, and they have been patient with us, and it's been a good collaboration.
On that note, would you just explain how you'll do it with folks living there? I don't think I get an understanding of that. No displacement. How will that occur? Folks move around, or?
Do you want to address that?
What we would do is we would go ahead and try to coordinate whether we have vacant units at the time for temporary accommodations, and/or we would pay out of pocket in regards to hotel accommodations.
Okay, thank you. All right, Eileen, I think you had a
I just
comment.
have a question, on the property tax exemption that's noted throughout, that that's not secured yet, and with naturally occurring housing, that I would assume the only change here is the covenants that you're restricting, there's no change in the actual rent rates, et cetera, necessarily. So I'm just curious, is there any risk of that, or is that are you pretty confident because of the city's involvement that the exemption will come forward?
As it looks now, the current tenants that were in the building when it was acquired, a large number of them actually qualify under the AMI limitations. And then new tenants have come in since then. The developer has kept an eye on making sure that the incomes qualify. So it seems apparent that they will reach their, all the tenancy meeting the 80% AMI restrictions so that they can get their property tax exemption. And the process will be just to do the income certifications. The developer will work with the HCID LA on that closely and get that done and certified, and then take that to the property, to the tax assessors, and work through that process.
Thank you.
Tina?
First, I want to, I know how difficult this is from my lens. And so I do want to applaud your work on this. This is as close to a conventional deal as you
Yeah.
can do. And so I hope that we see more of these, especially in Southern California and high-density urban areas where this type of activity is needed to preserve the underserved communities or the underserved folks that need low-cost housing. The exemption itself was also a question that I have, and I think that a lot of that is relative to the nonprofit here. I'm not as familiar with it, but it sounds like you all have done quite a bit of work in analyzing who they are and ensuring that their existing 501c3 and their purpose and mission. Can you just speak a little bit about them? Because there's just very little about them in your presentation.
The Happy Foundation is the nonprofit. We do have all the organization documents and have done our research on them. They're new to us.
Yeah.
And not widely known, perhaps, except to the developer. But we have, taken a look at the developer, who is also new to us, and the nonprofit. And the principal of Strategic Realty Holdings is Eddie Lauren. He is also the principal of the nonprofit. And Myron could probably add a little more to it, but their intention is to expand more into affordable housing and to provide these kind of opportunities. Eddie, in my conversations with him, has been very intent on this concept of NOAA, and he's really taken the charge on it locally. He has the same feelings about the NOAA program, and that we need to get into these kind of neighborhoods and acquire properties and transition them. And that is the part of the goal for Happy Foundation. And Myron, did I address that fully, or is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you hit it spot on.
Thank you.
But it does have a staff and, it's.
They
Yeah.
do have a staff, and they have officers. I know,
Are they real?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'm just saying.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tell?
So congratulations on this project. I know that the NOAA program is a huge priority in the city of Los Angeles. When I was working with the redevelopment agency, we had about 25,000 units that were expiring over the course of 5 years. And it was such an urgent, it was Bunker Hill money that was funded, and those covenants expired 30 years after that initial funding. So it's a huge issue for the city of Los Angeles. So 50 units in that battle we'll take anything we can get. I just want to commend the staff because when you look at the permanent financing, you clearly note that while we are providing subsidy of $1.5 million, which is not traditional to what Calhfa does, we are leveraging that with the city of Los Angeles, who is also providing $1.5 million in subsidy, and the developer themselves under, I assume, the foundation, and the seller is also about $1.5 million. So having that equal distribution of subsidy is really key to this program, and I think it's important. I think we would be remiss in not trying to figure out a solution by which we can continue a program like this, but I know that $1.5 million for each project that we put forward is going to be very tough. So as we think creatively about how to leverage the city's desire for this program and the need for the program, I want to encourage us to continue and try to be a little bit creative about maybe we can't apply that much money to it in the future deals, but having something that's going to be better than nothing. So congratulations on that, and on behalf of the city, yay.
Any other questions from members of the board? All right. Final wrap up, or is there a motion?
Move to approve.
It's been moved and second. Roll call, please.
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Gunn? Yes. Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter? Ms. Johnson Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Agee?
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Mr. Russell? Sorry. Ms. Sotelo?
Yes.
Resolution 19-15 is approved.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's proceed to the next item, number 6, Saratoga 2 Senior Apartments. The floor is yours.
Good morning, how are you?
Awesome.
I hope you guys are well. So I don't have Ruth's talent in managing slides, so I asked my good friends in IT to put this thing on a loop. So we're gonna do that. There we go. All right, so my first deal today is Saratoga Senior Apartments. It's a, what's that? I'm sorry, my name's Steve Beckman. I'm a loan officer here, so it's good to be here.
One of our recently promoted loan officers.
So Saratoga 2 is a senior apartment complex in Vacaville. It's been our portfolio for 19 years. It's 18 two-story buildings. There's 120 ones and twos. And it's located close to shopping and healthcare. It's 100% rent restricted to 60% AMI by the city of Vacaville and Calhfa. And in this marketplace, I just want to note that where vacancies average about 3%, the rents in this project are 69 to 53% below market. So they're doing a really good job with that. The property has performed admirably in our portfolio. It's averaged about a 1.8 debt service coverage ratio and has kept vacancy down to about 2%. The reason for the high debt service coverage ratio is that there are tenant-based vouchers, and I did not underwrite to those in this deal because I can't do it. I just can only use project-based vouchers. So there's additional cash in there that is helping the project. The property is in excellent condition, so excellent that when we did a P&A, there were no immediate needs identified at all. So what I did was I made sure that I reserved up using the 20-year reserve study And so they'll have over $500,000 in capitalized replacement reserves, and then there will be $300 per unit per year deposit over the life of the loan. The new loan's gonna be sized at $10 million. They're paying off the existing $5.7 million loan, which has an outstanding balance of 3.7. The property was appraised at $13,190,000, so the LTV is 72%, which is well below our 80% maximum for refinancing. The new Cali TFA regulatory agreement is actually going to restrict our units, the 20% of the units, to 50% AMI for 36 years. The loan term is a 35-year due in 17, but we're going to go out to 36 years so that we replace the remaining amount of time that's left on the SIDLAC regulatory agreement. The borrower's going to take about $5.9 million in equity out, and we've had their projects in our portfolio before, and we're very familiar with them. About 70% of their portfolio is 100% rent restricted, which is well over 4,000 units. So this will allow them to deploy money to develop more affordable housing, or just take their own money, which is the cheapest, and continue to do upkeep on their existing portfolio. So this is a refinancing, a fairly straightforward, simple transaction, so we're expecting to close in October. And we recommend approval because Cali TFA will retain an asset in our portfolio which is in great condition and operates very well, and guarantees affordability for the next 36 years in a tight housing market to a growing senior population. Any questions?
Awesome, thank you, Steve. Questions from the board? Motion to accept?
So moved.
It's been moved. Second by Teresa. Roll call?
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Gunn? Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Agee?
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Ms. Sotelo?
I'll abstain.
Resolution 19-16 is approved.
Before we proceed, I think we had a couple follow-up questions.
I just had one follow-up question, and everyone may know this, I'm happy to do it offline, but what is the difference between a tenant-based voucher and a, like,
The
I just didn't know what that meant.
the tenant-based vouchers they stay with the tenant and they can leave. So in underwriting, we don't want to include that revenue or overhang, we call it, because it could go away. So, whereas a project-based voucher is a contract that the project has, and it's guaranteed it stays with the project.
Got it, okay, thank you.
You bet.
And I had a question. Melinda and I were talking, it's Bill Dodd's Senate District. Do we notify the legislature that we're doing this, or most? I think we've done that.
send letters.
We send letters?
Legislator.
Yeah, that's.
To the congressional and the.
Senate, or California.
Our state legislators and the congressional district that it's in, we send a letter letting them know.
That's very important, given this dynamic and the pressure by the administration. It's good to let everyone know. Preston, I think you had a question?
No, I was gonna say I need to recuse myself. I live near the next project, so I'm just gonna step out as you guys debate it, talk about it.
Okay, thank
All
you
right.
for that. Moving on to the next item. With that announcement,
So,
number
as
7.
Mr. Prince did indicate, yes, the next project is close to his neck of the woods. I'm looking forward to working again with Corporation for Better Housing. We have a relationship with them on this deal. It's called Blackstone and McKinley. It's actually going to be built at the corner of Blackstone and McKinley in Fresno, which is in a qualified opportunity zone. It's going to be 88 units of brand-new housing, 1s, 2s, and 3s, so it'll be a family project. And then the other component to this project is it's mixed use, so there will be about 9,300 square foot of commercial space on the ground floor. So, oh, thank you, Kate. Yeah, and you'll see when these slides come up, you're gonna see pictures of the existing site. So the site was various auto businesses. So obviously we had to pay attention to the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental reports. So the remediation was done, and then in the demo, they're going to take care of any remaining asbestos or lead-based paint issues, and which will begin soon. So the last slide, you get the pretty picture of what it's going to look like. So we're going from I don't want to use the word blight, but we're going from a site that is maybe not as nice to a really gorgeous project, which essentially will catalyze, and their hope is that it will catalyze more development in this corridor, this Blackstone corridor, which is a qualified opportunity zone. It's a transit-oriented development. There's a little over $12.5 million of HCD money from the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities program in there. So it's right on a bus rapid transit line, very close to Fresno Community College and shopping. One of the things that Corporation for Better Housing does on a lot of their projects is they install photovoltaic solar, and that'll be the case in this project as well, which reduces resident electricity costs. All the units will be restricted to 60 and below, and CalHFA will restrict to 50%, with HCD in the city of Fresno restricting down to 30% AMI. The rents in this case will be about 38 to 77% of market rate rents. So you've got the financing stack in front of you, so I'm not going to run through that. But what I would like to say is that the $5.6 million of CalHFA financing of both the first lien perm and subsidy will leverage about $17.5 million of public money. So we're partnering with both HCD and the city of Fresno on this deal. There will be 4% tax credits, and the reason why I bring this up is that they're going to use a taxable tail to build the commercial space, but the tax exempt piece will be a little over 29 million, and then the taxable piece will be about 1.7. They'd like to close construction in October, and then they'll convert out in December of 2021. So given some of the intricacies of this project, I just did want to bring up just a couple of risks that we looked at. The site was occupied by auto businesses, so took a long time looking at all the environmental reports, and so the mitigant was that it's all been done and certified, and so that's been taken care of. The other risk is more of a financial risk, and that is that there is commercial space here, whose revenue will be contributing to the cash flow of the overall project. So how we mitigate that is the borrower will have a master lease with the developer. 1,800 square feet is being leased by the city of Fresno for a community senior center. So that's a pretty locked in actually rate, and actually they're going to get that for a very low rate. The remaining 7,500 square feet will be leased to a private tenant. So in the underwriting, what we do is we only take half of the potential lease revenue. So we use a 50% vacancy rate in the underwriting. They told us about $1 a foot. In my research for that neck of the woods, the market's bearing about 85 cents to $1.25. So I thought that their $1 a foot was reasonable. So with that and the 50% vacancy rate and only taking half the revenue, it's still cash flows. The other thing we did was the underwriting standards call for a 6-month operating expenses plus debt service operating expense reserve. You can back off that a little bit if the developer is known to you. So what I did was I used 5 months. So I kept a little bit more in there to mitigate this commercial space. The other thing is that the appraisal came back at $7.2 million. So for our first lien loan, and actually for our combined loans, our LTV on this is only 46%. So it's a lower risk in that respect. The last thing is that, as I mentioned, the developer, we've had a great relationship with the developer, and we actually have a pipeline of their deals coming in as well. But the construction lender we're familiar with, we've worked with. We know the architect, we know the GC, and the management agent. We've all had experience with these folks. They're familiar to CalHFA, and they have experience doing tax credit deals. So, we recommend this deal because it'll provide much-needed new housing stock to Fresno and provide a catalyst to future development in a qualified opportunity zone. And then also, too, because we've worked with this team, we know them very, very well, and we would like to be a part of this. Thank you. Any questions?
Color commentary.
But, go ahead,
Ms.
Eileen.
Gallagher,
Just two questions. One, just generally on the kind of ground floor commercial, I know that was the sort of vogue for a long time, and I know that my understanding is that in some cases that it's hard to lease out. Are they doing this because they think there's demand for it, or what was the motivation for creating so much commercial versus units?
We have Justin Hart here, who's with the developer, and he can.
Justin Hart, thank you. Part of it was to comply with the zoning code out there, which required a component of mixed-use comportion of it. We also thought that given the location on the Blackstone corridor, it definitely has a demand for commercial aspects. The 7,500 square feet right now we think is right within the sweet spot for that. We have had preliminary conversations with several potential tenants, including pretty notable tenants as well. So we're confident that that, particularly in connection with the affordability components, will serve as an added value for those residents that were living on our development.
Thank you. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
I have a couple questions. The first one is that railroad track seems to cut across. Is that an active railroad, or how
Yeah.
does this interact with?
It is an active railroad. It was planned for through the CEQA and the City Development Code. We are taking steps to mitigate when that does pass through sound barriers and higher STC windows.
Okay.
So it was all studied through the CEQA and the entitlement process through the City of Fresno. The City of Fresno directed us to the site as well as an added value or opportunity to redevelop and repurpose this area. This is part of a larger Blackstone corridor plan, and so they're looking to revitalize this area as they continue to invest dollars into that portion of the City of Fresno.
And I guess to that end, would you just expand the financing as a result of it being in an opportunity zone? Was there any advantage to that, or
We've
could you
been
share
working.
with us?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've been working on this development for quite some time. So this development we initially started this development, I think, as early as 2016.
Before there were opportunities.
Before there were
zones.
opportunity
Okay,
zones,
right,
sir.
right.
So while the opportunity zones, as we are understanding through IRS regulations and guidance, don't necessarily make deals, it definitely has added value to the deals in terms of the tax credit component. Certain potential tax credit treatments for these developments through our syndicator can be realized, which might help buttress or bolster up some tax credit pricing, back-end issues, losses, et cetera, et cetera. So it definitely sweetens the overall financing package.
Yes, Gail.
I pause to say that giving a tax credit for a program that was already started, it doesn't seem as though it actually changed. I think this is a great project and I support it, but I think the idea that an opportunity zone where you were already on the way in now somehow buttressed a financial package that was already pretty rich, like I just have to disagree with that on the record. I think that has been some of the issues, and so I'm all for the project and I don't want to confuse the issue, but I do think somehow that opportunity zone financing changed behavior in this case.
And I want to be clear, it didn't make the deal.
It did make the deal?
It did not
Okay,
make the deal.
thank
So
you for
again,
clarifying that, yeah.
to state, the deal was feasible without that opportunity zone component.
Right.
As we said, opportunity zones don't necessarily make the deal.
I
It definitely
appreciate that.
facilitated certain loss profiles.
But
Right,
you do
and it's the tax credit more valuable now and more marketable now because it's in the, like, is your investment pool that's gonna potentially buy your 4% federal tax credits, is it a bigger pool?
It could be.
Okay, and so that's what he's saying, that it could buttress, it could make the equity
Got it.
more
Okay.
valuable.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Another question, go ahead.
So here is a particular project, if you look at the amount of subsidy that HCD has put into this, the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities funding is for disadvantaged communities and to provide that catalyst kind of, to make those projects that but for would not have necessarily happened. And so I think your Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities money was your money that came in first, or one of your first in monies, even though it's permanent financing. The reason CalHFA continues to provide the necessary filler and the financing in these type of projects is because as an Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities project, this is a state priority. And so this is a way in which we know this was a local priority because you look to see the sources of funding and what locals did. We know this is a state priority because we see that $12 million in HCD affordable and Strategic Growth Council's Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities. And CalHFA and the Treasurer's Office are able to come in and provide that additional piece in perm financing and tax credits to make this all work. And so I just want the board to understand that when we are looking at projects like this, it could be a project that is not fitting squarely within our guidelines, but we do things to mitigate so that we can continue to push these type of projects forward. And this is another way in which we try to align with our sister agencies to make sure that we're meeting state priorities. So I just wanted to bring that little color to the table. Now, one of the issues that I want to continue to work with the Strategic Growth Council, and Susan is not here, but she did ask me some questions early on. The Strategic Growth Council and HCD is the monitoring fee for affordability that goes on for these type of grants. And so when you are having the affordability levels that this particular project has, because it's down at 30% AMI, the 0.42% loan servicing fee that is being charged for by HCD is on an annual, is a lot of money. Can you guys pull that number out?
$52,000.
$52,000 a year to monitor affordability for 30% AMI, on top of CalHFA and the Tax Credit Committee monitoring for affordability as well. And so we as the state really need to be thinking about if we're going to be making these projects financially feasible and we're all monitoring for affordability, do we all need to be doing that? And should there be a lead agency that is monitoring the affordability, whether that's at the local level or the state level, but do we really need local government and 3 different state entities monitoring affordability at an annual cost of that to a 30% AMI project? And this has been going on since 1994. Literally, there was a report done in 1994 that said from an asset management and loan monitoring aspect, state agencies need to identify a lead agency so that you're not putting these kind of costs back on a project. And I know we all have our operations that we have to pay for, but when we're talking about that kind of cost on this type of project, I think we need to be putting our heads together to deal with that issue.
Can you, is that legislation, Tia? Or what are you saying?
I think in HCD's case, it may be. I'm not sure.
It may be. Zach Olmsted, Steve. We did a big analysis in terms of sizing down that 0.42, and obviously with the first money in, that had to be a condition, of it. But I think you raise a good point. Then if tax credits come on the back end, could there be some sort of, agreement long term? But we would have to obviously deliberate around that with all of our partners and figure out how everyone can get made whole. But it's an important point if we're stacking asset management, operational cost on top of one another. It's worth exploring. But we had done, I know historically, a lot of analysis on sizing that appropriately and determining if 0.42 is enough. So there was legislative change to kind of put that in statute as like the max that can be charged for So it is evaluated project by project.
Right. And one of the
by
things
our
may be that the point, how do you then negotiate it so that HCD can pay for their operations? Because this is going to help them pay for their staff, but then once there is a transition to permanent financing, and there's other monitoring or asset management coming in, the way to be able to negotiate that fee, so that that fee lessens when somebody else is taking over those duties.
Draft MOUs or something
Exactly.
like that that could, we need to make sure it happens, of course, at a state level or local level, but someone needs to be accountable. But certainly, we could pursue some sort of MOU or something for those funding sources that come in later, potentially an evaluation of, is there anything to be charged, or maybe a lesser amount than normal would.
Exactly.
That'd be the discussions we'd have to have on.
Yes.
On the policy side, and there may be legislation that could be needed, there may be MOUs that could be created. It would just depend on, I think, the funding partners.
So Tia, at Deloitte Sotelo, it's my understanding that the 0.42% of the loan amount, which is the annual, it's a debt service. So it is going to pay down the debt of HCD, but to the extent that that is not really realized by the project and there's no effective impact to the project because HCD is still getting its higher percentage of residual receipts as part of the cash flow. So it's not really offsetting that 0.42%. And the other complication is that there is a CPI adjuster annually, so that percentage is increasing every year. So it's not just a fixed amount that's predictable and that the developer could take advantage of, knowing and understanding the cash flow, but it does escalate annually. So that is complicated.
Very.
And TCAC charges a $410 per unit capitalized monitoring fee up front, which is, it's given to them as a one-time fee when the reservation is effectuated. And then local agencies also,
Charge a fee.
charge. So yes, I absolutely agree that there needs to be a confluence of agreement around the.
Right. So I bring that to the board's attention because this is something I've been struggling with. And we are going to continue to have conversations with our sister agencies and the Strategic Growth Council and the Treasurer's Office about, is there a way to identify a lead agency and how do we keep some of these costs from potentially impairing projects, worthwhile projects. So thank you.
Great. Any other questions, comments from the board? Is there a motion to, it's been moved, is there a second? Is there a motion and a second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chairman, we are short a quorum right now. I'd like to recommend we postpone the vote just briefly until we regain a quorum.
Want to start the presentation on the other one? It's been moved and seconded, we'll just hold off on the vote.
Tell you what, why don't we take the vote and then have those folks add on?
Okay. Ms. Gallagher? Ms. Gunn?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson Hall?
Yes.
Mr. A.G.?
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Sotelo?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that 7?
No.
Okay, it was short.
Yes.
How many do we have? What is the,
Okay,
what's the vote?
so let me explain. It'll be helpful. Ms. Grant, we do not, oh. Okay,
is
we were waiting on a letter of delegation for Ms. Grant to have her vote be official, and we have received it, so, yes, that would actually make the quorum now. Thank you very much.
Ms. Gallagher just joined us.
Ms. Gallagher, can I take your vote?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. With that, we've approved
Just looking now.
Resolution 19-17. Thank you.
But we still do need to add one vote for Ms. Miller.
No, she's a non-voting.
Okay, even
So
better.
we're clear.
Great. Now that we got that figured out. Yes, here he is. He's coming in. Let's move on to item number 8, resolution 19-18. Mr. Soup. You're up.
I come up here and everyone leaves. Um, um, Hi, my name is Timothy Su. I'm the Director of Single Family Programs, and I'm also the Interim Director of Financing. Resolution 1918 amends our Resolution 1906, which is our multifamily bond resolution. What we're doing here is that we're increasing the amount of conduit issuances that we can do, which are either 501c3s or taxables or any bonds that don't require private activity volume cap. And the impetus for this is that one of the things that I mentioned the business plan earlier on a different matter, but one of the things that we have on our business plan is to expand our conduit issuance business. And what this would do is that it would allow us to do a specific kind of conduit issuance that we closed last month in August. And what it was that it was actually one of these transactions that are, how should I say that, it was very different, and I think that there will be people out there trying to replicate a transaction like this. What we did was that we took, we took 15 permanent loans from Citibank's balance sheet, and we put them into a trust, and we issued securities against them. So what it did was that, as many of you guys know, Citi Community Capital, which is one of the largest lenders in the state, or in the nation for that matter, in affordable space, has been building up a very sizable balance sheet of affordable loans and bonds. This is why a lot of locals and CalHFA do a lot of conduit issuances because of these private placements that Citibank does. So over time, they built up this huge balance sheet, and what this transaction did was that it allowed them to create liquidity out of these balance sheet assets, so they can free up liquidity, free up capital, so they can do more lending in an affordable space. The transaction was so successful, I guess that a couple sort of stars aligned. They also hit the market when rates were really, really, really low. And they were able to prove to their management that these assets indeed have liquidity, and they can generate liquidity when needed. It was so successful that they are asking us if we can increase this amount so we can do a lot more of this. It's not clear to me that we'll actually reach $2 billion. That may be an outside number, but it is definitely a huge expansion of this line of business. So again, this resolution will increase the amount of transaction we'll do like this. So to be more specific, under Article 3 of this resolution, there's a section that talks about the amount of bonds that we can issue that are either 501c3, taxable, or any bonds that do not require private activity volume cap. And this transaction does not require private activity volume cap. So I'll pause for comments.
Questions, comments?
I have one. So many years ago, CalHFA did individual loans with entities, and then repackaged those loans and got a lower interest rate for themselves, but didn't pass it on to the original developers, owners. And so do they get to participate in or is this purely beneficial to CalHFA?
I would say it's beneficial to Citibank to be able to create liquidity out of their balance sheet assets. So we do, as a conduit issuer, we do earn a fee out of these transactions, but in large part, it's kind of strange. It's kind of strange for us to look from afar what these banks are doing. Maybe not for someone like Tina, but as they grow these lines of business and then continue to work with their internal folks about capital charges and their credit folks, and also sort of management sort of dedication of resources to continue these lines of business, this is actually an important thing for them to do to prove that, you know what, we're booking these assets and we can actually sell them when we want to. And when we sell them at opportune time, they could actually realize a huge premium. In other words, you know, these loans could be, let's say, paying 4.5% to 5 to 5.5%, and given today's marketplace, they can actually realize a huge premium out of these transactions. They're getting liquidity, they're booking basically P&L, I would say that the primary beneficiary is Citibank.
And ultimate, if I may.
You may.
Dig me out of my hole. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, but ultimately, if Citibank uses it the way that I think that they will, because I did reach out to them on this, is that they will redeploy this back. It'll be recirculated back from them back out to the affordable housing community. So this is actually creating a sustainable business practices that can be replicated with other folks that provide capital to affordable housing. So I know it may not sound like it's a big deal, but it really is a big deal if we can convince, as you said, right now it's just Citibank, or I don't know if it's just Citibank, but I know that if you can convince other lenders, we're talking about to do this, then you're actually putting more dollars back into these communities or having capital, because traditionally what happens within the banking community is we have to fight for capital allocation along with everybody else. And unfortunately, the folks who do affordable housing or community development don't often get the pick of the litter.
Oh, that explains it.
So by us being able to convince our internal leadership teams that this is a sustainable business practice, it means that we are creating a sustainable business practice that ultimately the affordable housing community will benefit from. So I think that this is amazing. Would love to see how and we're getting a fee out of it, the agency, so I'd love to see how we might think about doing this a little bit more.
We fight for capital charges, but we get the very best people. Tina, you know that.
Yes, I do know that. Starting with Tim.
I have a question.
Hang on, Zach. Miss Gallagher had a
I
question.
just want to piggyback though on Preston's question is, the underlying mortgages presumably had some ability to refinance? And by securitizing them, are we in any way locking that extending the call option out in our debt so that we're limiting their ability to refinance the underlying mortgages, or are they still able to do that?
They're still able to do that. So we don't own these loans. So as you know that when we do a conduit deal, we are simply a pass-through mechanism. Part of the reason why this transaction did well was that most of the lending that Citibank does has a 17-year balloon. So we kept the transaction short in that way so that we kept the credit spreads tight. So most of the loans have some prepayment options about like 15 years or so. And there's like a small penalty of about 15 years or so. And then 17 years they're expected to balloon. So it didn't impact any of the any of the underlying loan documents.
Zach Olmstead, HD. I think this is interesting. So in the freed up liquidity, are they obligated in any way to use some or all of that freed up liquidity for affordable housing, or are they saying they will?
They're not
Like-
obligated.
Within the deal, they're not obligated.
No, they're not obligated.
So 5 years from now, they could choose to use all that freed up liquidity for different purposes. I'm just saying, like, it's a handshake deal right now. It's like a verbal commitment that
Well,
it increases the liquidity generally, and some of that benefit will flow to affordable housing.
So similar to the last deal that we saw, in which $5 million in equity was taken out for an affordable housing developer, they're not obligated to put that back into affordable housing either. But that is their commitment, because that's the space they're living in. So this is a similar commitment
I
from
get that. I just
Citibank.
wanted to clarify.
Right.
Like, there's no.
Right. When you refinance
Within
your
the
house,
deal, there
you can
is-
do
there
what you
is
want
no-
with your money.
I just wanted to clarify that
Yes,
for the
yes,
record,
yes,
that
and
if
that's
there's
how
no-
the market works. That when you refi or you securitize or you're able to get liquidity, we can ask for that commitment, but just as you would when you
I
refinance your
certainly
house.
agree that it puts pressure on that commitment, but I
Okay.
just wanted to clarify that for everyone.
I would add some color to that in a slightly different way, in the sense that it's possible that should someone like Citibank be able to execute a transaction like this and generate liquidity on their balance sheet, that for the assets in which they cannot, that over time these kind of transactions can actually generate some differential between assets that can have liquidity versus assets that cannot. What I'm saying, what I'm,
I think that's a nuanced argument, but.
yeah, so
Um,
then it's a good, so what I'm saying is that it's a good thing that they can generate liquidity, because should they not be able to generate liquidity, the day could come in which they decide to charge more on their loans.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Right.
Because they can see, well.
No, I agree with that. I just wanted to clarify, there's no obligation that they do so.
That's legit.
And, I totally agree. The more in the pot, the more chance it will benefit the industry.
Ms. Sotelo?
And I think that we can actually, it's a trackable measure, right? I mean, we will be able to see over the course of the next 5 to 10 years what city is or isn't doing, in the affordable housing space. And not that CalHFA would do that, but I mean, that's how we define good players, right, in the marketplace. And as public funders, or as those that have the public trust, we should look at that thing. I mean that behavior.
And it's not like Citibank's going away. They do
Right.
a lot of work with us, so we're gonna be able to touch bases with them. Just one follow-up question from me, Tim. In the beginning, Tia talked about conduit issuance. Is this related to this, or is that what you were talking about?
Our MOU with the city of Los Angeles?
That's a different issue.
Yeah.
Different issue, okay.
Yeah, but
I suspected that, but I
it's
wasn't.
a different issue, but from a strategic business point,
It is what we're trying to
it is part of the whole strategy. We are trying to expand this business line, because we feel that we have certain advantages in terms of who we are, but we also have some advantages in terms of the ability to take a little bit of risk. How we ended up structuring this deal was a little bit different, because what they had to do to credit enhance the transaction.
Great, any other questions? Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Is a motion a second?
I'll second.
There's been a motion a second. Roll call, please.
You love this thing. I'm glad for my motion to
It
be.
was teed up. Jovan's quicker, that's all.
Yeah, it's quicker. That's all.
Ms. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Gunn?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Ag?
Yes.
Mr. Olmsted?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Ms. Sotelo?
Yes.
Resolution 19-18 is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the final couple items, the various reports I want to call everyone's attention. But Tim, I read the piece on the swaps, and that's very good news. Any additional color you want to add to that? How we knock down that debt? No.
All I would say is that our story on continuing to deleverage our balance sheet is near sort of the conclusion of that narrative, but we still have a couple of things to do. I mean, you can still see that we have a sizable swap portfolio that's what I call one of the tax councils that we work with at some point. She says that swaps that don't hedge bonds, they're swapping air. We still have swaps that are swapping air. They're not there to hedge bond risks. We still have that. We still have a couple of transactions that we did with U.S. Treasury back in the depth of the crisis, in which we should really take out. They did a favor for us, and we need to complete sort of like that deleveraging story. But it's close. We're getting very close, and we still have a couple of things to clean up. You can see that we have a very small VRDO position, and we also have a couple swaps that we really kind of need to take care of.
On that, I know you're tuned into it, the LIBOR exposure. We have another year or so maybe to deal with that, but that's something obviously part of the.
So my hope is that we have the LIBOR exposure both on the derivatives, on the swaps, and we also have that on the bond side.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm referring to when I say that we still have things to do is that we're going to try to take out the bond side of that exposure before the transition, and I think we can. But the derivative side, we would probably have to go through the whole transition and move it over to SOFR.
Yeah. Thank you.
great comment. Okay, thank you, Tim. Any other observations? Now's the time for public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, I think we got an email, 3 more meetings for October and November.
Yes, I have an update for you on that. We will not be holding an October meeting. So currently, we are planning for our November and December meetings. So December typically is a difficult month to get the attendance of the board members. So I ask all of you to please note the date on your calendar and see what you can do to be here. It would be helpful. The reason we will be holding the meeting is we have a number of loans that we're currently underwriting and that will need approvals by the board. So we definitely will need to take action at that meeting.
There you have it.
Tia doesn't cook.
You want Tia to make.
We got goody two shoes.
You're running right over to Freeport Bakery, yes.
Okay, all right, with that, we're adjourned.